The stillness of the night enveloped the master bedroom of the grand mansion. The main lights were off, leaving only the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting its light across the king-size bed. Outside, a light drizzle tapped against the window pane, reflecting the faint silhouettes of two figures on the bed. Jungkook was positioned over his wife, Park Yin, one hand supporting his weight while the other gently cupped her cheek. His lips pressed against hers, warm, deep, yet filled with caution. His breath came heavy, mingling with the faint trace of cologne lingering in the air. Yin felt the kiss deepen, her fingers unconsciously clutching the sheets. But when Jungkook began to trail his lips down her neck, she instinctively pressed a hand against his chest, halting his movement. "Jungkook, enough," she whispered softly, almost like a plea. Jungkook froze for a moment. His jaw tightened, but he closed his eyes, drawing in a deep breath to calm the storm inside his chest. Slowly, he pulled back and lay down beside Yin, staring up at the ceiling. It had been like this almost every night for the past 3 months. This arranged marriage had yet to be fully consummated. Yin wasn't ready. Jungkook knew that, and though he was a feared mafia boss, in front of his wife, he chose to be patient, never forcing, never complaining. Even if every night, he had to tie down his own restraint, holding back the burning desire within him, just so she wouldn't feel pressured. "I won't force you," he finally said, his voice low yet steady. "But don't think I don't want you, Park Yin." Yin turned to look at him, guilt flickering in her eyes, but also a hint of relief. Jungkook only gave her a faint smile, then pulled the blanket up and wrapped his arm around her from behind. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and inside that bedroom, both Jungkook and Yin were quietly learning how to understand one another. The next evening at the dining table, as usual, the atmosphere between them wasn't exactly warm. Jungkook was naturally the quiet type, rarely speaking, and the soft clink of cutlery was the only sound filling the vast dining room. The air felt even heavier because Yin was just as reserved. Jungkook sat at the head of the table, cutting his food with precise, measured movements. From time to time, he sipped his red wine, his gaze fixed on his plate. Yin sat to his right, moving carefully, as if afraid to make any unnecessary noise. The silence was broken by Jungkook's deep voice. "Tomorrow night, the entire Jeon family will gather at Uncle's house," he said bluntly. "Grandpa is hosting his golden wedding anniversary, 50 years. All family members are required to attend." Yin slowly lifted her gaze. Tomorrow, her voice was almost a whisper, but still audible in the quiet room. "Yes," Jungkook replied curtly. He resumed cutting his steak, seemingly indifferent to his wife's reaction. Yin hesitated. Her hand holding the fork trembled slightly before she set it down gently on the plate. "Since this afternoon, I haven't been feeling well," she said softly, avoiding his eyes. "I think I should rest until tomorrow." Jungkook stopped moving. His gaze shifted to her, his expression unreadable. Deep down, he had already guessed she would, once again, find a reason to avoid his family. Since their marriage, there had always been an excuse. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he set down his knife, reached out, and touched her forehead with the back of his hand, then moved to her neck. His fingers were cool yet firm. Jungkook's brows furrowed. "Your temperature is normal." His tone was flat, but his dark eyes studied her face as if trying to read her mind. Yin quickly looked away, swallowing hard. "It's not a fever. My stomach's been hurting all day. If I go, I might have to keep running to the bathroom. It'll be troublesome." Her words tumbled out quickly, and she knew her voice trembled slightly. She tried offering a small, reassuring smile. "So, maybe it's better if I just stay home and rest." Jungkook was silent for several seconds before letting out a long breath. "In that case, don't push yourself." He gave her shoulder a gentle pat before turning back to his meal. Yin lowered her gaze, feeling relieved yet uneasy. She knew Jungkook understood this wasn't the first time, and it likely wouldn't be the last. Meanwhile, Jungkook stared at his plate without really seeing it, deciding not to press her further. When dinner ended, the two made their way to the master bedroom upstairs. No words were exchanged along the corridor, only the steady, heavy sound of Jungkook's footsteps and Yin's softer ones, as if she were deliberately avoiding his eyes. As soon as the bedroom door closed, Jungkook took off his suit jacket and hung it neatly on the rack, while Yin walked straight toward the bathroom. "I need to go to the bathroom first. My stomach's acting up again," she said briefly, trying to sound as if she was in discomfort. Yes, she had to pretend to convince Jungkook that her stomach really was bothering her. Jungkook simply nodded as he began unbuttoning his shirt. Inside the bathroom, Yin closed the door carefully, then stood with her back against it, her shoulders pressed against the cold wooden surface. Her breathing was already uneven, her chest rising and falling quickly. She stared down at the floor, trying to calm herself, but her fist tightened as if she were holding in an invisible pain. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to her wrists. Her heartbeat quickened. There, she could see them clearly, bluish-purple bruises encircling her skin, like the marks of a grip that had been far too strong. Her breath quickened further. "No, I'm just tired," she whispered to herself, as if trying to soothe her own mind. "This isn't real." But then, that man's face flashed in her mind again. The sharp, threatening gaze, the crushing strength of his fingers on her wrists. It felt so real, so vivid, that it had left a trace. Yin shook her head hard, trying to push the image away, but the tightness in her chest only grew heavier. Without realizing it, tears began streaming down her cheeks. She stepped quickly to the sink, turning the tap until water gushed out. Her hands moved frantically, splashing water onto her face, hoping to bring herself back to reality. She stayed there for a while, staring into the mirror with shaky breaths, trying to convince herself. Slowly, she lifted her hands again, and this time, nothing. Her skin was clear, no bruises. Yin took a deep breath, closing her eyes, feeling a small wave of relief, but it lasted only a moment before a chill crawled down her spine. That man's face appeared in her mind once more, making her body tense all over again. Outside the bathroom, Jungkook was already lying on his side of the bed. His eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, but his ears were tuned to the sound of running water that had been going on for quite a while. A faint crease formed on his brow. He began to wonder if his wife truly had a stomachache. Not long after, the bathroom door opened. Yin stepped out, trying to walk calmly even though the tightness in her chest hadn't completely gone. Jungkook, who had been lying down, immediately sat up against the headboard, turning his gaze to her. "If your stomach really hurts, have you taken any medicine?" Yin froze mid-step, her breath hitched for a fraction of a second, her eyes widening slightly. Her words faltered, and she quickly looked away so Jungkook wouldn't see her hesitation. Seeing that, Jungkook raised an eyebrow slightly, waiting for an answer. Forcing a faint smile, Yin tried to smooth over her expression. "Not yet. I'll take it now," she replied softly before turning toward the small cabinet in the corner where the first aid kit was kept. Her hands moved quickly, opening the box, taking out the diarrhea medicine, and pouring water into a glass. She swallowed the pill right there in front of Jungkook, making sure he saw it. Jungkook watched every movement, then let out a short sigh. "Good. In that case, get some rest. Don't stay up late." His tone was flat again, but this time there was a hint of relief. Yin only nodded and walked to her side of the bed. She lay down with her back to Jungkook, pulling the blanket up to her shoulders. Her eyes closed, but her mind was far from calm. On the other side, Jungkook stared at her back in silence. He believed the stomachache excuse for tonight, but somehow, he couldn't shake the feeling that Yin was hiding something much bigger. And if she was, why wouldn't she tell him? A small sting of disappointment settled in his chest because it meant that, to her, he was still a stranger. He turned his gaze up to the dim ceiling, folding his hands behind his head. His breathing was heavy, his mind restless. He exhaled again. The warmth he had been trying to plant in Yin's heart was starting to feel like it was eating away at him instead. He had tried to create closeness, to give her space, to be patient. He was well aware their marriage wasn't built on love, but on an arrangement. Still, couldn't Yin open her heart to him? Just as he had chosen to open his heart to her from the very day he accepted her as his wife. Was he truly so unworthy in her eyes? The question spun in his head, bringing with it a tightness he didn't want to admit. Jungkook glanced once more at her back, wrapped in the blanket. He couldn't see her face, and somehow, that made the distance between them feel even greater. He drew in a long breath. Even now, she still refused to be intimate with him. He tried to understand, tried to restrain himself every night, but somewhere deep inside, a small wound kept growing, one that cut deeper with each rejection. Each time, she didn't want him. If she could be this closed off with him, then it was no wonder she was even more uncomfortable around his family. Jungkook's gaze hardened, his emotions tangled. He had always been able to get anything he wanted, never once hesitating even against the most dangerous enemies. He had never opened his heart to any woman before, but now that he had, to his own wife, only to be rejected indirectly and repeatedly. It turned out the feeling was deeply unpleasant, painful, in a way he had never known before, and it disturbed him more than he cared to admit. The next morning, The warm sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains of the mansion, casting a golden glow that contrasted with the heaviness between them. Jungkook was already dressed neatly in a smart casual outfit, ready to leave to visit his grandparents. Yin followed him in silence, her steps slow as she walked through the living room toward the main door. Her hand gripped the edge of her cardigan, as if unsure of what to say. At the door, Jungkook glanced briefly at his wife's face. There was no smile, but neither was there anger. "I'll be going," he said simply. Yin nodded softly. "Be careful." Jungkook responded only with a short look before stepping outside. As his private driver opened the car door for him, he glanced back once more, seeing Yin still standing in the doorway. But he chose not to bring anything up. He didn't want to create an even more rigid atmosphere between them. He knew there was a distance they had yet to bridge, and forcing anything would only widen that gap. The car slowly pulled away, leaving the mansion grounds behind. Yin remained standing there for a few more seconds before finally closing the door gently. Once the sound of the lock clicked into place, she took a deep breath, unsure whether it was relief that Jungkook had left or an emptiness from the silence his absence left behind. A week later, at night in their bedroom, the soft glow of the bedside lamp cast a warm hue, creating a calm atmosphere before bedtime. Jungkook, already lying down, looked toward Yin, who was straightening the blanket. "Tomorrow night will be the grand opening of the new family hotel," Jungkook said, his tone flat yet firm. "So you and I, definitely have to be there. That hotel belongs to the core family, my parents and me. So it's only right that you come and accompany me." Yin, who had seemed relaxed just moments ago, suddenly tensed. Her fingers toyed with the corner of the pillow, her eyes avoiding Jungkook's. A clear unease radiated from her, but this time, it was hard for her to find a reasonable excuse. She took a slow breath before asking, "Will the rest of your extended family be there too?" Jungkook gave a brief nod. "Yes, all of them." Yin's anxiety grew. The thought of seeing that man again made her chest feel heavy. But like it or not, this time there seemed to be no way to avoid it. Hopefully, that man wouldn't show up tomorrow. That was Yin's only wish. With a heavy heart, she finally said, "All right, I'll come." Her words made Jungkook pause for a moment before letting out a relieved breath. Though his expression remained calm, there was a faint glimmer of relief in his eyes. At least this time, his wife wasn't trying to hide behind excuses. The next day, as soon as Jungkook and Yin stepped into the ballroom, the scent of luxury perfume mixed with fresh flowers greeted them. The crystal chandeliers sparkling on the high ceiling reflected light onto elegant tables filled with guests dressed in their finest attire. Soft classical music played, but to Yin, the sound felt like a distant echo she couldn't enjoy. She walked beside Jungkook, following his steady steps, trying to smile as some guests greeted them. However, her steps froze for a split second when her eyes accidentally caught a figure standing near the VIP guest table. A tall body, a neat black suit, and a gaze too familiar, Dongmin. The man who had been a frightening shadow over the past 2 years, a figure who had left a deep trauma on her. Yin's blood seemed to freeze, her breath caught, while all sounds around her suddenly faded away. Only her heartbeat was loud in her ears. Jungkook, walking beside her, glanced slightly, noticing the small change in his wife's steps. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, almost whispering amid the noisy event. Yin quickly shook her head, trying to regain a calm face, but her gaze couldn't leave that man. And now, the distance between them was only a few meters. Yin's steps felt heavier, but she forced herself to keep moving beside Jungkook. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart, but everything shattered when that gaze caught her. Dongmin slowly turned, as if sensing her presence even before seeing her. Their eyes met, sharp, deep, and unreadable. No smile, no greeting, only a look that made Yin recall that night at a club 2 years ago. That was their first meeting. Then the second meeting, just 3 months ago, on the day of her wedding to Jungkook. The same gaze, but this time mixed with something she didn't dare interpret. And now, the third meeting, here, in the ballroom full of light and smiles, yet making her felt trapped in a room without air. Dongmin kept staring at her, as if reading her mind. That look was neither judgmental nor friendly, more like someone who knew a lot about her but chose to keep it tightly locked. Yin quickly turned her face away, trying to focus on the light conversations of guests around her. Her hand unconsciously gripped Jungkook's jacket sleeve a little tighter. Jungkook looked down at her, his brows slightly furrowed. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked softly. Yin forced a thin smile. "I'm fine." However, she knew her smile wouldn't fool Dongmin, and from the corner of her eye, she could feel the man hadn't stopped staring at her. Time felt like it passed slowly for Yin. Although the music continued playing beautifully and the guests' laughter filled the room, her mind wasn't there. Every move of Dongmin at the end of the room felt like a slowly approaching threat, even though he did nothing but occasionally talk to the people around him. 30 minutes passed. Cold sweat began to appear on her palms. Her breath felt heavy, and she knew she couldn't hold on any longer. Slowly, she leaned close to Jungkook's ear and whispered, her voice barely audible, "Jungkook, how about we just go home now?" Jungkook was surprised. "Now?" he murmured, glancing briefly. But when his gaze landed on his wife's face, his surprise turned into caution. Yin's face was pale, and her hand grip felt cold. He wanted to ask more, but chose to hold back. "All right," he answered shortly. They walked toward the table where Jungkook's parents were chatting with other guests. Politely, Jungkook explained that Yin was feeling unwell, so they had to leave early. His father and mother looked slightly worried but understood and allowed them to go. As soon as they got into the car, Yin leaned back, taking a deep breath as if just escaping from a suffocating room. A sense of safety began to creep in, but her body now felt weak. Her hands were still cold, even trembling slightly. Jungkook, sitting in the driver's seat, looked at her for a long moment before starting the engine. "Are you sick?" he asked, his voice laced with concern he did not hide. Yin shook her head gently. "Later, I'll tell you once we've arrived." Their eyes met briefly, and Jungkook nodded, choosing not to push. The car engine started, and Jungkook drove toward their home. After they arrived in the bedroom, Yin still looked restless. However, instead of starting to talk, she lowered her head and avoided Jungkook's gaze. Jungkook sighed softly, trying to lighten the mood. "Why are you so quiet? I'm here to listen. Tell me what really happened. Why did you suddenly want us to leave early?" he asked gently. But Yin only shook her head and turned her face away, refusing to speak. She had wanted to be honest with Jungkook, but somehow telling the truth embarrassed her. She wasn't ready to reveal it to him. Several minutes of silence passed, the quiet growing heavier. Jungkook tried again in a calmer tone. "Yin, can't you start trusting me? Aren't we supposed to trust each other? Don't close yourself off like this." Yet Yin remained silent, as if the walls around her heart were too thick to break through. And that slowly wore down Jungkook's patience. He took a deep breath and stared sharply at his wife. "If you still can't accept this marriage, then why did you accept it? If it's too hard for you, why didn't you just refuse from the start?" Yin was shocked, her eyes widening. Jungkook's sudden change of tone pierced her heart. "Is there someone else in your heart? Or is there another reason you've been hiding all this time?" Jungkook added, his voice mixing disappointment and anger. Yin was silent, her voice stuck in her throat. She hadn't expected Jungkook to think that way. Jungkook grew more furious. "Answer me, Yin." His voice rose sharply. Yin was shocked, her body trembling slightly as she mustered the courage to look at Jungkook, who was beginning to get angry. This isn't what you think. There's no other man in my heart. And also, I never rejected this arranged marriage." Jungkook exhaled harshly, his jaw tightening. "This is all because you never truly accepted me. You never accepted me as your husband or my family. You keep building walls between us." The room fell silent. Yin lowered her head, unable to say anything more. "Be honest with me. All this time, have you ever really seen me as your husband? Physically, emotionally, you've always rejected me. Why?" Yin closed her eyes briefly. Her voice trembled as she finally spoke. I'm ashamed to tell you," she said softly, holding back tears. "But I'm also scared to face this situation alone." She bit her lower lip as she continued. Jungkook frowned, but remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "Your uncle, Dongmin, he behaved inappropriately towards me 2 years ago." "What?" Jungkook was truly stunned this time. "Uncle Dongmin?" Yin nodded, but quickly turned her face away. Shame. That's what she felt now. "That's why I couldn't stand being near him for long. I wanted to leave, but I was trapped in that situation." Jungkook was silent, his eyes wide open. Shock and concern welled up inside him. He hadn't expected to hear that from Yin's lips. But he quickly reached for her hand and held it tightly. "Why didn't you ever tell me before? I'm here for you." Yin looked at Jungkook, tears beginning to fall. "At first, I didn't feel ready to open up about all this." Jungkook took a deep breath and asked again, "How did it happen? How did you know him?" Yin took a long breath, looking at Jungkook with watery eyes. "That night, 2 years ago, I went to a club for the first time," she began softly. "I was celebrating my best friend's birthday with some friends. I told my parents I was just going to a friend's house, so they didn't know I was actually going to a club." Jungkook nodded, giving her space to continue. After the party ended, I was walking alone down a club hallway when I met him. At first, I didn't know who he was, but suddenly he forcibly dragged me into one of the rooms. Yin's voice trembled, her face paling. He almost did something terrible to me. He forced me. Even my wrist hurt so badly. I was truly terrified. Jungkook was frozen, hearing that, silently cursing the man in his heart. What made me realize was when the door suddenly opened. His friend came in to return his phone that he left on the table and called him Dongmin. Yin continued. That's when I knew his name. Her eyes widened, remembering the moment. But I was even more shocked when I saw him again at our wedding and found out he was part of your extended family. Jungkook was silent, looking deeply into her eyes. Have you ever told this to your parents? He finally asked. Yin slowly shook her head, looking down. No, I purposely hid it. From the start, I lied, saying I was just going to a friend's house. They believed me. Besides, no one cared in that club. The people there were very wild. Jungkook took a long breath, understanding the heavy burden his wife had carried alone all this time. He finally understood why she had been so closed off to him. Now, Jungkook rubbed his temples, his emotions peaking knowing all this. But he tried to stay calm in front of Yin, not wanting his anger to make her more scared and uncomfortable around him. Jungkook took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Slowly, he reached out and grasped Yin's hand again, his touch firm but gentle. You're safe now, he said softly, his voice steady but filled with determination. I will always protect you, no matter what. Yin looked into his eyes and saw the fire burning there, anger and resolve mixed into one. She felt a pang of fear deep inside. What are you going to do? She asked quietly, her voice trembling just a little. Jungkook's expression remained calm, but there was steel beneath his words. I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens to you again. Whatever it takes, I'll handle it. Though a part of Yin was scared of what Jungkook might do, the risks and dangers that might follow, something inside her stirred. For the first time in a long while, she wanted to trust him completely. She wanted to feel truly protected by her husband. 3 days later, while Jungkook and Yin were still seated in the dining room after dinner, a bodyguard suddenly appeared and bowed, giving a report. Dongmin is already at the airport tonight, ready to depart overseas, sir. Jungkook nodded expressionlessly, then asked, how is his condition? The bodyguard replied, he was just discharged from the hospital this afternoon and still has to use a wheelchair. Jungkook simply nodded again and said, all right, you may leave. Yin looked surprised upon hearing the news. She turned to Jungkook and asked, what happened that made Dongmin have to use a wheelchair? Jungkook answered casually, that's a lesson he had to learn. Yin grew more curious. Then why does he have to go abroad? Jungkook looked at Yin calmly. I just told my uncle to leave Seoul, go anywhere he wants, as long as he never dares to show up in front of you again. Yin was stunned, though she couldn't deny a sense of relief in her heart. Jungkook gazed at his wife with a gentle look. You're safe now. I will always make sure that no one can hurt you again. Yin took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. Thank you, Jungkook. I've told you, you're not alone. Now there's me who will always be with you.